Hi everyone. We had a great question into our Facebook site about bullying. I'll read it out. I realised every time I'd been triggered today was because I was witnessing my perception of bullying behaviour. Then I realised all of the people at work I have issues with are the strong-minded, direct-talking, pushy, in-your-face characters, and I perceive them as bullies. I've realised bullying is a huge, huge trigger. It's coming through time and again. If the behaviour is directed at me, I feel inferior, intimidated, tearful, unhappy, not good enough. Today, the particular issue which triggered me most wasn't directed at me. It was directed on several occasions against a younger colleague who I watched become intimidated, lost for words, etc. And my reaction was fury. What now? Yeah, it's a great question, isn't it? And bullying is such an emotive word. It almost immediately cuts out any space, doesn't it? There's a bully who is nasty, evil, aggressive, controlling, and there's a victim who is at mercy of this bully. And so we've got the bully wrong and the victim in the right, and the word alone really seems to just fix that in place. And so to even approach this subject feels a little bit contentious, really, because it seems to risk in any way, any trying to find any space in it at all seems to risk letting the bully get off and further victimizing the victim by implying there was anything that could be different about the way this is perceived. But we have to, don't we? We have to consider that possibility as soon as we start to realize that bullying behavior or behavior can be seen easily as bullying behavior, or it's just behavior. And the only thing that is making the difference is the perception of that behavior, isn't it? And how can we have this conversation without denying that there is behavior there that can be really destructive, that can really cause torment? Well, what we're always interested in, this whole conversation, the only point of it is freedom, isn't it? So for that listener there, the last thing we're interested in doing is denying her experience for the sake of denying it. The last thing we're interested in doing is saying, well, there's no such thing as a bully. You're making it all up. It's just your thinking. Sort that out and you'll be fine. Because that's not freedom, is it? That's just it's just pretending that the bars of the cage aren't there when they really are there. It's, that we see them, day in, day out, we see this behavior, we feel these reactions. To try and pretend it's just made up is just to really constrain that reality even more. And we're not interested in that there's no truth there, there's no freedom, there's no love, there's no peacefulness. And those are the things that we're interested in. So where is that? Where is the freedom in all of this? Well, it has to start with us, doesn't it? It has to start here, as in a realization that my reality changes from moment to moment. and that for sure there will be moments when exactly the same behavior from the boss or from their colleague won't create that same reaction. It will just be seen as the boss in a bad mood, or assertion, or confidence, or it might even be seen, I'm right now feeling really vulnerable, and these words seem emotive. These words are really emotive. What's going on with that when yesterday they weren't? And so we can start to see here how these inputs from the outside are quite nebulous, really, in many ways, aren't they? They shift and change, and one day there's a furious reaction against them, and the next there's just not. And so that invites a reflection on what is it that is making, what is it that's creating that reaction, that is making that behavior coming in sometimes impossible to deal with, sometimes terrifying. And what we can start to see is that in a way, it's the available capacity. It's the space in which they're received. And sometimes that space is really narrow because it's crowded in by things that have to be protected. It's crowded in by all these areas where we feel particularly vulnerable, where we feel exposed and raw and anxious, and yeah, like sort of too open, overly open. And so this space is crowded in with these things, and the words or the actions are going directly into all these vulnerabilities. And then other days that space is just more available, there's just more capacity, because there's less of this jangling need for affirmation or for softness or for protection. And so that whole shifting self and how it relates to the shifting perception of that behavior starts to reveal that bullying, the behavior is bullying when it's taken personally, when it goes straight into the identity, and when it goes into an identity of hopelessness and lack of capacity and need to be affirmed, need to be loved, need to be approved of, need to be made whole. But instead this behavior is really sort of zapping these needs and energizing them even more, isn't it? It's like everything is jangling. And so what we have to conclude is that the external behavior and the self are made of the same thing in that moment. They don't exist without the other. And this is not denial, because the experience is absolutely real. But the foundation of that experience is what is being protected, what's vulnerable, what's at risk. And that has nothing to do with the other person, and everything to do with the conditioning of this mind body here, everything to do with that. And so beautifully in this question from the listener, the bullying, that perception of bullying is making transparent the conditioning that is so jarred by a harsh word or a or a strident individual. It's fascinating, isn't it? And as that conditioning, and we can really easily see how this relates to parents or to our peers when we're growing up, or to teachers, particular teachers that we might have had, where that stridency or that parent aggression, that overbearing quality we sort of cower away from it, and we become hopeless in it. You can see that. Other alternative reactions could be to match the aggression. Like that sort of fight. We sort of fight or flight here, aren't we? So it could elicit, instead of a shrinking away, a overtly aggressive response back, like real conflict. And both arise from what's been learned, and then increasingly so once that's been learned, increasingly life builds that response, doesn't it? Embeds it, because then once it's been learned that I'm hopeless or helpless in the face of aggressive confidence, then every time that comes in, there's that reaction that just continues to reinforce it over and over and over again until the triggers can be so slight. It could be a glance or a harsh word or a criticism, and instantly we're recoiling back through our whole childhood, through our whole life of these things happening. Yeah, so that's what's going on. And now that we're in this conversation together, these things happening today are revealing that, and they're showing the reaction, they're showing the trigger, they're showing the whole past story that relates to it. And that's the opportunity now. So for this listener, these are being seen, and that fury, that desperate, helpless anger, really, in the face of feeling so angry that that colleague was being spoken to like that, and yet totally helpless. We're in this paralysis, aren't we? And it's only repeating itself over and over again. But now we're seeing it. It's being seen. It's coming up to the surface. These reactions are being made visible. And now we just continue to watch. She says, now what? Now we continue to watch life do the unveiling, because this is going to happen over and over again. We'll continue to see it. We'll see the reaction. And because now we're looking at things not as this personal self in this helpless hamster wheel of reaction, we're looking at it as a scientist or as an anthropologist, an explorer in a foreign land. We're really fascinated by the whole tableau playing out. Now we just watch it. We watch it over and over and over again. And space will come in that watching, because we're going deeper in. We're getting closer in. And so as we get closer into anything, the space in it starts to become visible, doesn't it? Anything. Getting closer and closer in. And these old rigidities of how people have to be, how we have to be treated to be okay, of what tone is okay, what words are okay, this starts to wobble. It starts to give itself up. And as that space is created, the paralysis goes, because there's presence there. There was no presence before. We're in our past before. We're in another person's experience. We're we're fighting another person's words. There's zero presence. There's no reality going on. But now in this investigation, we're close into reality. We're deeply present. And in that presence, for the first time, perhaps, there might be, who knows? We don't know what will come, do we? We don't know whether whether that behavior will absolutely disappear because it was never there in the first place. It was only held in place by this hair trigger conditioning, or there will be that aggressive behavior there, and then there will be an inner no to that aggression that gets said. There'll be an inner resolution that rises up to meet that aggression, to say, no, that's not how you talk to me. That's not how you should talk to my colleague. Maybe that will happen if it's still there in that presence. Likely that would happen. That because the paralysis is gone. Paralysis is only caused by a belief in fixed things that aren't true. Paralysis of response, I mean. But now we're present. Now we're really still, and what's not true is falling away. Reactions come. There's a fluidity and an authenticity, and we really could call this our inner strength, because it is the resolute place of stillness, of peace. And there's no animosity to that person. We're not starting a war here, because there's the understanding now that just as our behavior of withdrawing and rage and anguish was the only possibility before, we see that for everyone else. So there's no blame, there's no conflict, there's just, no, that's not okay. Or there's infinite other possibilities available. And this is the end of bullying, really. It's the opposite of denial. It's really seeing what's going on, what's true, and in that space there's a response. And so we can see really that bullies are held here. They're in us, really. And as there's more presence to that reality, as there's the falling away of blame, falling away of that mammoth separation, so our past is healed. Oh, yeah. And this is the beautiful thing, isn't it? We start to see that parents, peers, teachers, they can't behave in any other way, and equally our perception could not have been any other way. And so the whole past becomes, it's no longer this fixed, concrete block of this is what happened to me, this is what they did. It's this fluid understanding of how things shift as perception shifts. And this really is the end of all bullying. It makes it impossible for us to inflict aggression on another, really, out of misunderstanding, out of defensiveness, out of separation, as this conversation deepens, as things that aren't true fall away. So our own bullying behavior ends, and our response to all other behaviors in the world comes from the understanding that they are us. There's no difference. Yeah, so an emotive topic. Thank you very much for sending that, and so much love. Bye.